2-2. Crawford on the ground to first. This could do it. Avi Hole tags the base, and the Detroit Tigers are headed back to the World Series. They defeat the White Sox 5-2, sweeping them in the ALCS. And Chicago falls short yet again. After falling short again in the postseason, the White Sox have yet another offseason in front of them. We wrapped up season number 6 in the last episode, getting swept in the ALCS by the Detroit Tigers. Not only did we get eliminated, but we went out sad. I mean, we really struggled to hit the ball, really the entire playoffs, but especially these 4 games against Detroit. And I think it's fair to say having 4 of our best offensive players injured largely contributed to that. But our offense was absolutely pathetic through the playoffs. We ended up hitting .204, which was 10th out of 12 playoff teams. But all the teams who are with us, they only played a few games and they lost in the wild card. We had a much bigger sample and still barely hit above 200. 9th in on base, 9th in slugging. Did not hit the ball well whatsoever. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing. Shane Schmidt and Romeo Sanabria were really the only guys who statistically played well. Credit to Sanabria for stepping up with the losses of Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro, but he's really the only guy who I feel like lived up to their play on offense. Even Schmidt, he was really good against Kansas City in the wild card, but slowed down after that. The pitching was fine. I mean, it's hard to fully blame them for the loss, but we had certain guys struggle. Noah Schultz did not pitch well. Framber Valdez did not pitch well. I think we put a little bit too much on the plate of the bullpen. They were great against Kansas City, great against Texas, but they ran out of gas against Detroit, and it always felt like an uphill battle against the Tigers that we never really stood a chance in. So that brings us to yet another offseason. And remember last year when we spun the offseason wheel, the Reinsdorfs retook control of the White Sox, which means we are likely going to have to be smart with our money. The offseason wheel will be returning. There will not be a sell the team option on the wheel, given that the team has already been sold twice during the duration of the series. It would be pretty unrealistic for that to happen again. We have a long list of impending free agents, and as I mentioned last year during our World Series run, that might be our only chance with this group because of the guys we lost last year, and now all the players set to leave this year. Much of our bullpen, arguably our 2 best starters, and pretty much the whole outfield other than Justin Crawford. So let's go into the offseason now as we look to chase our AL Central foes, the Detroit Tigers, coming off their first World Series title in nearly half a century. So we'll start with retirements. I'm not expecting any of our big leaguers to retire, but we are going to lose somebody in the organization. One of our prospects in starting pitcher Bobby Roberts, who will be leaving because of an injury he suffered during the year. I believe we acquired Roberts via trade a couple seasons ago. He was a mid-round pick in 2028, so really not that long ago, and he's only 24 years old. But he fractured his head, and because of that, he will be retiring. Other notable names across the league include Paul DeJong, Josiah Gray, Tomas Nido, DJ Stewart. Clay Holmes is in there, Luis Castillo, El Gary, Brandon Woodruff is in there. John Means retires off of an injury, a torn labrum. This is really unfortunate because Means, I feel like, is the guy who really helped revive the Marlins. Granted, Miami wasn't that good this year, but it sucks for Means, a guy who's always been injured throughout his career. And even in real life, he was supposed to sign last week, and on the day that he was going to sign the contract, the poor guy tore his Achilles. I mean, he cannot catch a break. A really unfortunate career, but a really good player with the Marlins. Eric Fetty is in there. Takoa Roby retires because of an injury. JT Realmuto is done with the Giants. The best player in the free agency list is Nolan Arenado, the, I think, 12-time Gold Glover or something ridiculous. Jeimer Candelario is done, former Detroit Tiger. Joey Gallo, who played 6 games with us in year number 1, he retires. Adolis Garcia is in there, one of the better all-time playoff performers in recent memory. Amir Garrett, Chad Green, Luis Guillorme is in there. Nick Gordon above him, D. Gordon's younger brother. A little bit further down the list, some more notable names calling it a career include our good friend Nick Maton, who was on our team for the first 3 seasons of this series. Things were so bad that Nick Maton was one of our bright spots. In the early seasons of the series when we were losing 100 games, he was one of our better players. And give him credit, he really wasn't that bad. Shout out to our favorite furry, Nick Maton. Kodai Senga is done. It's no longer time for Paul Sewald to pitch, who finished his career with us. In year number 4, we got him during the trade deadline with the Dodgers. Austin Slater, who also was on our team during the series, but never played a game with us. Our very first move in this franchise in episode 2 was trading him away to the Athletics for Robert Poussaint, who never played a game with us, and he only ended up playing 11 games with the A's. Miles Straw's in there, Christian Walker is done, and that's about it. Nolan Arenado will go to the Hall of Fame, well-deserved, certainly when you factor in the defense, along with the fact that he had nearly 2,400 hits, over 400 home runs, one of the best third basemen of this generation. So now on to the offseason, and of course, our good friend, the offseason wheel, returns. It cannot possibly be worse than what happened last year, forcing us to sell the team and forcing us to lose our best players. I mean, that was horrible. So I have altered the wheel slightly, given that, well, obviously it's now fully the Reinsdorfs in control. Not all of the spins are bad, however. There are still some good scenarios here, some scenarios that might cause us to be able to use more money or be more aggressive. But overall, the idea of the wheel is to add to the challenge for the series because it's not supposed to be easy running the White Sox, who are obviously run like one of the smallest markets in Major League Baseball. Yes, in real life, they did sign Munetaka Murakami, which is ironic, given that we had him in the Giants franchise last year. But the Reinsdorfs are cheap. There's no way around it. And this is, of course, the best way to simulate it. So we're going to spin it 3 times. We're going to hope for the best. And it cannot possibly be worse than last year. I think that's the best way to look at it. We're not going to get worse spins than we did a year ago, but we need to be prepared for just about anything. We could end up having to lose many of our key free agents. Maybe we're going to have to trade one of our key players. Of course, last year, we no longer were able to make the tough decisions on whether or not we should extend certain players. We made a big move at the trade deadline, getting Taj Bradley, and the offseason before getting Bryce Miller, who both had really solid seasons for us on the mound. We weren't allowed to re-sign either of them. They both end up in Atlanta. They both had pretty solid seasons with the Braves, and I certainly would have tried to at least extend Taj Bradley, if not for the wheel. Luis Robert, the face of the franchise, we couldn't re-sign him. And to be completely honest, the wheel might have done us a solid with that one because he was horrible for his standards, and I imagine he will continue to regress, given that his game largely relies on his athleticism. All right, let's get this show on the road. Spin number 1. Wheel, please, I beg, be nice to us after last year. You owe us a solid. Let's see. Oh, that's not bad at all. Push the chips in, be ranked number 1 in one of the team categories. So that means we must be ranked number 1 in either contact, power, pitching, speed, defense, or at the number 1 ranking overall. I can definitely work with that because it requires the team to improve. I like that. We're off to a good start. Spin number 2. Let's keep it rolling. We're 1 for 1 so far. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Jesus Christ, you've got to be kidding me. Money's tight. Decrease the team budget by 15%. There's the Jerry Reinsdorf spin we were waiting for. So this is exactly what it sounds like. What our team budget was this year, which I'll go over the math of that in a couple minutes, we must decrease by 15%, which largely will impact player payroll. Lovely. Spin number 3. I'm no longer happy with what the wheel has given us today. Please, Jerry, please do something stupid. Oh, my God. Handcuffed. All trades must be approved by ownership. Great. This one has been on the wheel since the very first offseason. We haven't landed on it yet. But basically, every time we try to make a trade this offseason, there will be a wheel. 50% chance of yes, 50% chance of no. It's basically the owner's approval. We will spin the wheel to determine if we're allowed to make the trade. If it lands on yes, obviously we can do it. If it lands on no, not only can we not do the trade, but we cannot come up with a counteroffer involving any of those players because that would be kind of cheesing the system. Well, I guess you could say that went better than last year, but that would be putting the bar on the floor. We're going to have a very challenging offseason upcoming with all the guys we have currently as free agents. We are required to make the roster better and make it a contender while also cutting payroll and have ownership fully tied up in our roster moves. So these are our team rankings currently going into the offseason. We are ranked number 1 in pitching, but 70% of our pitching staff is not under contract for this year. We're losing 2 of our 3 main starters, and we're losing most of our bullpen. So it doesn't really matter that we're number 1 because the pitching is probably going to look a lot different. As for the budget, that will be very challenging to manage. So how I was able to calculate what we will be allowed to spend with the budget is I went to last year's, and I see that we're using roughly $321 million within the organization. $302 million of which are going into player salaries. I multiplied the $321 million that we put into the team last year by 0.85 because that would be cutting 15%. And it's 272.85. Don't ask why Mike Kafka's on the bottom of that. I don't know. But basically, that's roughly $50 million that we have to cut out of the budget. And most of that $321 million is going into player salaries. So basically, we have to cut $50 million of player payroll that we would have spent. The good part is that we don't have a lot of money currently tied up. We only have 4 super big contracts currently with Noah Schultz, Drew Thorpe, who's back this year, very exciting, Edgar Caro, and Kyle Teal. But we have a lot less flexibility in terms of who we can spend on. We have to go bargain shopping, and we have to be very intentional with the players we want. So we'll start with the guys currently on the roster. Framber Valdez, we signed him to a 1-year contract last year, and I think for the most part it ended up being a good addition. We paid him to be an ace, and he was an ace. He's been one of the best pitchers in the league for a decade at this point. However, he's 37 years old. I feel like he really declined throughout the year, and by the time we got to the playoffs, he was out of gas. Now, it would be much less money than we gave him last year. I think he was making around $38 million. That number would go down to about 24. So, certainly more reasonable. We'll get back to him. And then we get to Hayden Wesneski, a guy who I really don't want to let go of because this is a major success story of our organization. The only reason why we got him is because of the offseason wheel that forced us to trade James Karinchak in year 1. Wild that he was one of our top 5 players. But we traded him for Wesneski, who's turned into an awesome player for us. We converted him from a reliever into a starter, and he's become one of the better starters in the league. We tried to extend him last year. It didn't work. And his price tag has gone up, despite the fact that his production has gone down. If he was 28, 29 years old, I would certainly be willing to do that. But he's 33. He's quietly very old. I'm going to offer him the qualifying offer because I wouldn't mind bringing him back on the 1-year, $27.5 million. And if he says no, I guess we can get a draft pick out of it probably. But I'm not going to offer him a super long-term extension because of his age. Yuri Perez, we didn't give up much for him at the deadline. We weren't really expecting a whole lot, and we didn't get a whole lot. He wants $14 a year. No, I'm good because he didn't really play for us at all in the playoffs. Bryce Wilson, we picked him up off the streets halfway through the year, and he did a pretty good job for us. $10 million is certainly worth what he did for us this year, but in an ideal world, I would rather probably not have him as a starter, so we might get back to him. As for the bullpen, we've got a lot of guys here. Jojo Romero had a terrific season for us. Brock Burke is a really good player when healthy, but he missed most of the year. He got hurt in April, and that's coming off the season last year where he suffered a season-ending injury. So 2 years in a row, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But his last 4 somewhat full seasons, he has WAR of at least 1. That's great for a reliever. Edwin Uceta was really solid for us this year. Brian King, this ended up being a good deal. We traded Cody Hosey for him, who was injured for much of this year again. Surprise, surprise. King is only good in even-numbered years, though, and his FIP does not line up with his ERA. And then Tony Santillan, who's been with our team for a few years, although he was in free agency the first month of the year. We picked him up off the streets. He ended up having his best season with us. That's most of the bullpen, who is not under contract. Abner Uribe, Ezra Valenzuela, and Bruno Merced are the only guys who are coming back next year. So I would obviously like to bring a lot of these relievers back because our bullpen was the strength of the team. But we have to be mindful with the money that we can spend. And so because of that, I do want to bring some of these guys back, but I think we're going to lowball them. Jojo Romero, I thought, played really well as a setup guy. Lefty, I want him back. But we're going to lowball a little bit, 1 year, 7.5. We're going to do the same for Burke, 1 year, 7.5 as well. I don't know why he would be more expensive than Romero. And then Tony Santillan, 1 year, $5 million. Those are the three guys I'm going to offer. We're not going to do Uceta and King right now. Both of them want pretty much identical contracts, which is fair because I think they're equal players. They both want $6.7 million a year because they're both trolls. So I think we're going to let them go for now. I'm not opposed to it at the right price, but I want to be cautious with how I spend our money, and I prefer the other relievers over them. In terms of position players, we've got three of our outfielders: Corey Julks, Dane Myers, and Mike Trout. Corey Julks, much like Hayden Wesneski, is another one of our success stories, if you will. He's one of the longest tenured players in the organization, one of the few guys who's been here longer than us. He was here in episode 1 as a fringe roster platoon guy, and for the first few seasons of the series, that's exactly what he was. But we ended up sticking with him, and Corey Julks, in his 30s, turned into a really good player. He was excellent in the minors in 2027, so I decided to keep him around on the big league team, and he's been really good over the last 3 years. OPS in the mid-800s. He can play just about every position on the diamond. I mean, he's turned into one of our most consistent and one of our most valuable players. But he's 35. He's not very young. And if you take out his 4.1 season last year, he only has a 1.3 career WAR. That's not to mention that he has dropped his production in the playoffs. And this year in particular, it felt like he was an automatic out when he was up to bat. $20 million, I think, is fair for a starting level outfielder. But for Corey Julks, who I feel like has kind of hit his peak with us and has struggled in the postseason, I would rather move on, especially given the price tag. I'm going to really miss him because much like Hayden Wesneski, I've really enjoyed watching his development, going from a nobody to one of our most important players. Dane Myers, we signed him to basically be the Band-Aid for Luis Robert, and he was really solid for us this year. I thought he hit for good power, 256 average, second highest career WAR. But again, if you take out the 3.1 WAR he had in 2028, through the rest of his career, it's only 0.7. He's also 35 years old, much like Corey Julks. He does provide a lot of defensive versatility, though, which is a plus, also like Julks. And I do think he was better in the playoffs this year. Dane Myers, by the end, was our number 3 hitter, which more so goes to show the state of our lineup. I'd probably rather pay him, truthfully, than Julks, and he's asking for less, but I'd still rather get a little younger. And then Mike Trout, he was our spark plug this year. We signed him after the month of April, and my goodness, was he awesome. It's a real shame we didn't get to see him out there in the playoffs because, I mean, he was great. Nearly a 3-WAR season, would have been on pace for over 40 home runs. He only played half the year. He's 39 years old, though. I do want to bring him back, but I don't trust that he's going to play more than 80 games next year, and I don't want to give a long-term financial investment to a guy who's not going to play, given that we already have to penny pinch and cut payroll. So we're not offering many guys extensions, only a few of the relievers, Romero, Burke, and Santillan. I'd still like to bring maybe a couple of those guys back who we didn't offer, but I want to go into free agency with a clean slate. We do need to add to the staff. I'm going to look at Jeremy Hefner as our hitting coach. We have to, again, penny pinch and bargain hunt with our staff. So I'm looking for a lot of B-grade guys. And I like Hefner for the +2 contact, +2 power. I really don't care about drag bunting. It's not in the 1980s anymore. Losing one plate vision kind of sucks, but I'd rather that than just about any other archetype because strikeouts are kind of the least valuable stat, if you will, in terms of hitting production. Justin Rutledge, I'm going to look at him as our pitching coach. I really like the +3 stamina and the +2 hits per 9. I don't love losing control, but I'm willing to make that, I guess, gamble, if you will. And then Rahul Pena as our farm director. I want to teach our young guys to get on base. +3 contact, +3 plate discipline. It's perfect. -3 durability sucks, and so does -1 control, but I don't really want to offer an A-grade coach because we need that money on our roster. We get the hitting coach, we get the farm director, we're still waiting for the pitching coach, as that brings us into free agency. We've got some housework to do as well before we can start spending. I kind of went into this season expecting a pretty bad free agency class. Honestly, I think this crop is pretty good. I think it's a talented free agency class, and there are a few guys who very early on caught my eye. Now, we only have one pending offer. That's Hayden Wesneski's qualifying offer. So I was wondering if any of the relievers accepted their extensions. They did not. So Jojo Romero, Brock Burke, and Tony Santillan are all in free agency. All of the guys whose contracts expired, they're in the free agency pool for us. So currently, we're not using that much on player payroll, only around $73 million. But that doesn't mean we've got a boatload of money to spend. $101 million are estimated to go into arbitrations and renewable contracts. So that's $100 million that we must factor in. So that's really about $175 million currently put into the roster. That's a lot of money. How much are we going to have elsewhere? I would guess maybe $100 million at the most. So the top of this free agency class is basically the San Francisco Giants lineup. 4 of the top 5 players were on the Giants last year with Holiday, Arozarena, Rutschman, and Adames. So San Francisco, they are taking some big punches this offseason. But I do think it's a solid group. A lot of star power offensively and a number of good pitching options. As we look at the roster, we lost 2 starters, we lost most of our relievers, and we lost our entire outfield. So we need pretty much everything other than catcher and infield. We need probably 1 or 2 starting outfielders. We need 2 or 3 starting pitchers because last year in the playoffs, I don't think our rotation of having 3 guys is sustainable. We've got Schultz, we've got Thorpe healthy. That's really about it. Bullpen, we only have 3 guys right now, maybe 4 if you count Joey Smith, who I do like and I thought played pretty well in a limited role last year. We still are going to need like 4 or 5 more relievers. So we're going to have to spend a lot of money on pitching. And in terms of the outfield, I want to add some star power. I want to replace the impact that we lost with Luis Robert last year. Dane Myers was a Band-Aid, but I kind of want to shoot higher. So we'll start with 40-man roster. We are going to add a couple guys who I don't want to lose in the Rule 5 draft, including George Tovar, who was our 4th-round pick all the way back in year 1. 99 potential, hasn't gotten his opportunity yet. We're going to include him, and I'm also going to include Jack Hurley, who was in the system at the start of the series. We traded him, though, to the Astros to get Cam Smith, and then that following offseason, we got him right back in the Cody Hosey, Brian King swap. He was not a guy I wanted to let go of in the Cam Smith trade, so I'm happy we were able to bring him back. He had a really good year for us in the minors, so I think he's a guy who could give us some big league production if needed, especially considering the outfield depth is not the best. On to arbitration. I would love to consider offering certain players extensions, but it's not a good idea because we need the least amount of money put into the payroll in the short term. We have to think about this offseason and this offseason only. We can't really think ahead for the future because the Reinsdorfs are making us penny pinch. So I think I'm going to offer most of the guys in here because I would like to bring a lot of these guys back. I explored an extension with Ezra, buy low, pay him when his value is the lowest, but I don't think that's the cheapest option. I think the cheap thing with him is to just offer arbitration, and I think we can get him at a reasonable price given that he wasn't very good last year. So I'm going to offer about $2.8 million. I think that's fair. It's going to be a lot of money, though, for guys like Cam Smith and Justin Crawford, given that they're both established and they're both on the final years of team control before free agency. So from there, I offered most of the guys here. Waldo, I decided to offer. We're going to give one to Abner Uribe. I thought he had a pretty good year for us. Daniel Schneemann, I'd like to bring him back. Utility guy who's got the clutch gene. Brian Ramos, I'd like to keep around. $7.5 million feels rich, but I do want him back on our team. So that's most of the guys here who we ended up offering, but there are a couple players who I have decided to let go. And I'm not willing to pay multiple $1 million because, well, they didn't really contribute a lot down the stretch. That being Jagger Haynes, Colson Montgomery, and Hagen Smith. So Jagger Haynes was the big get for us in the Bryce Wilson trade. The trade was a flop, considering we had an option to start either one of these guys in our elimination ALCS game, and we chose Bryce Wilson. He still has positive WAR over the last 2 years, but he just hasn't really developed. There's no consistency with him, so I think we're going to let him go. I'm not opposed to going back to him in free agency, though, if we strike out on other pitching options. Colson Montgomery, we have gone through the ringer with him. I thought I was going to trade him before 2029. I kept him on the roster, had a great year, had some big hits for us in the playoffs. He was really good in 2029 and 2027, but he's never become a consistent starter for us. He's 29 years old. He costs too much money. He wants like $7.5 million. No, he was unplayable in the postseason last year. I can't give $7.5 million to a guy who's not going to find the field. Hagen Smith, kind of the same deal. His rookie year, I thought we had an ace on our hands. I mean, he was unhittable his rookie year. Never was able to reclaim that glory. He wasn't bad in 2027 or 28, but he was worse. Then he got hurt, and then this year, he started most of the year, but was really bad. So much so that, again, we couldn't play him in the playoffs. We needed guys at the back end of our rotation. We just needed bodies. We needed average production, and he couldn't even give us that. So I'm not willing to pay him. The Hagen Smith experiment is unfortunately over. I figured we might as well see what we could get for these guys via trade. So we're going to offer up Hagen Smith to the Arizona Diamondbacks for a couple pitching prospects. Hagen Smith is only 27 years old, so maybe he can turn it around. I don't think it's going to happen, given that his attributes are regressing and his production has regressed every year of his big league career. He peaked as a rookie. So we're going to look at these two pitching prospects. Jason Phillips, a 24-year-old starter, throws absolute gas, second rounder in 2027. And then Mark Spalding, a 20-year-old reliever. But remember, there's a twist. Ownership has to approve the trade. 50% yes, 50% no. And it lands on yes. Great. Okay, that's easy enough. So when it lands on yes, we're allowed to do the deal. Hagen Smith, the experiment is over. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss him because I really had fun with him earlier in the series. Colson Montgomery, I think I'm going to send to the Rockies. I think Coors Field would be a really good fit for him to try to revive his career. I still think there's upside in the tank. We're going to look at D'Angelo Frederick, a first rounder in 2026. He is Rule 5 eligible, which I think is why the Rockies would do this. But again, we've got to spin the wheel. Does ownership approve of this trade? We landed on yes the first time, and this go around, we land on, it's going to be close. No. So not only will we not be trading Colson Montgomery to the Rockies, but we're not allowed to come up with a counter. We're not allowed to trade him at all. I'm still not going to offer him arbitration because I don't think it's worth it. So we're going to have to let him go to the open market. Ownership does not want D'Angelo Frederick. I guess they don't want to take up the spot on the 40-man roster. I'm not going to offer Jagger Haynes, though, because, again, I wouldn't mind reoffering him in free agency if the price is right. Contract renewables. I would love to extend Shane Schmidt, Bruno Merced, and Barney Wagner. I really want to, and I think the prices are reasonable. 10 years, $250 for Schmidt. I'd do that in a heartbeat with how much he improved last year. But we can't do it because that's $25 million. We cannot give him $25 million when we can give him $780K. Same said for Bruno Merced, and then the same for Barney Wagner. I feel like all three of these guys, their price will continue to increase, and if we do want to extend them in the future, the price will be higher, but we have to mortgage that salary because ownership is forcing us to. I ended up renewing most of the guys in here because they're all cheap, and I need as many cheap big leaguers as I can get. A number of these relievers I decided not to offer because we've got a bunch of relievers in the system, so I figured we don't really need them. All right, now it's time for the good stuff. So players have been renewed. Arbitrations are not finalized yet. We have around $75 million estimated for arbitration and $81 million currently tied up. So that's about 150, give or take, probably more like $155 million currently put into the roster. I would say we really have about $250 million that we can put into player payroll. So I think we have about $100 million for free agency. That's a lot of money, even with the 15% budget decrease. And I want to turn this team into a true World Series contender. Last year's team was clearly not good enough. Even though we had our nice run the second half of the year, I still felt like it was pretty obvious they just didn't have enough talent to get over the hump. Well, I think it's a good free agency class, and I think we've got a great opportunity to do so. Offensively, we were missing star power in the postseason. And granted, that was largely because of injury. Kyle Teal's back, or Edgar Caro's back, Barney Wagner's back. Maybe our three best hitters. But I still kind of want to add one more big-time piece. Most of our offense is kind of filled out already. I don't think we need to go after bodies. I think we need to take a big swing. And a guy I've been eyeing up for months is right here for the taking. I think Randy Arozarena is the missing puzzle piece in our lineup. He is 36 years old, but he is one of the best players in the league. Wherever he goes, he wins. He signed a 3-year, $30 million contract with the Phillies in the second offseason of the series, and it became one of the best contracts in the history of baseball. I mean, he turned into one of the best players in the league. Signed a 1-year deal last year with the Giants and was even better. He hit .342. He draws a ton of walks. He hit 44 home runs. He had a WAR above 9. In 2029, he only played about 60 games, but he would have been on pace for a WAR at about 8. And I think unlike Luis Robert, he will age gracefully because his game relies on contact and plate discipline, but it's got a little bit of everything else. We're probably going to have to overpay to make this happen. I'm willing to do it because I think Randy Arozarena is the missing piece to turn this team into a contender. I'm not going to put anybody else on the free agency big board. I want to put all of our time, attention, and resources into Randy Arozarena. It's definitely a risk that we're putting our eggs into one basket, but I really want him really badly. The Cubs are interested in Willy Adames, another former Giant. Good player, really solid 6-year contract, and he got better as the deal went along, but we don't need infield. I think we're fine in the infield. We need outfielders. 34% motivation. That's not good. I'm going to keep the risk, though. I'm going to keep going after him. It's a gamble, but why not? Our first big domino is off the board. Alex Bregman is going to the World Series champion Detroit Tigers. Maybe we can manifest this to happen in real life, please. So I would imagine he's replacing Jose Ramirez at third base. J-Ram won the World Series MVP. He's a free agent. Bregman's arguably better. Not arguably. He is better. And for $22 million for 1 year, that is a bargain. If I knew he was that cheap, I absolutely would have considered that. Hayden Wesneski declines the qualifying offer, and Roki Sasaki signs with the Reds. A lot of money. Cincinnati's banking that last year was a fluke, and he can play more like he did early on. The Gunnar Henderson trade officially a loss for the Orioles. Jackson Holliday, the Cubs are interested. Jackson Holliday's the best player in the free agency pool. I would rather go after Randy Arozarena, though. I thought about it with Holliday because I think he's really good, but we need outfield, so we're going to keep going after him. Willy Adames signs with the Orioles. Baltimore spending some money after a really disappointing season where they had to trade away Jackson Holliday to the Giants. Nothing with Randy yet, which is good. Brett Beatty signs with the Dodgers. He will replace Alex Bregman at third base. So the Dodgers get a little bit worse, but they get younger. The Twins are interested in Framber Valdez. Okay, interesting. So he might be staying in the AL Central. I like Framber Valdez. I thought he had a really good season for us. But in the month of September and then in the playoffs, he really struggled. And I think age is catching up to him. I'd rather not give $25 million to a guy who I don't think is going to be rock solid from start to finish. I want guys who I can trust when we're making a playoff run. You know who I think I trust in October? Probably one of the all-time great postseason hitters who's won 2 World Series in this franchise. Randy Arozarena, who's at 48% motivation. We just got to get it up to 50 in order to offer a contract. So Valdez will be staying in the AL Central, but not to Minnesota. The Kansas City Royals are signing him to a 3-year deal for $86 million. Yeah, I was not giving him that. Valdez is a really good player. So the fact that he is still in our division is not good news for us. The Royals, who were a playoff team last year and have a great young nucleus, just got a lot better, in my opinion. The AL Central is going to be an absolute dogfight. This guy's been one of the best pitchers over the 2020s. I think he significantly raises the floor of a pitching staff. And he's only a year removed from winning the Cy Young in Arizona. He made the All-Star team last year with us. We only had a couple All-Stars. He was one of them. He's consistently finished with a WAR above 4, which is really impressive. James Wood is out of our division, but he's signing with an AL contender. Good news is he's gone from Minnesota, but now he's with Seattle. It's a bit of a gamble for the Mariners. He's only played 132 games over the last 2 years. The James Wood trade was a big disappointment for Minnesota because he couldn't stay on the field. Now or never for Randy Arozarena. His motivation has gone down to just 43% because he's getting a bunch of offers. So basically, I think the only way we can get him is if we overpay him. The problem with that is, well, ownership is handcuffing us. We can only spend around $100 million on players. We would be giving him half of that. Is it worth it? Yes. It is absolutely worth it. I know we have to fill out the roster and we have to fill out the pitching, but this is a star. This is a superstar. In order to make this happen, I will offer him the extra year. He will probably be worse off in 2 or 3 years from now. But I'm not thinking about 2 or 3 years. I'm thinking about the present, right now. How can this team win a World Series this year? 2 years, $90 million is the offer. Randy is ready to make his decision. He is signing with the White Sox! We got our guy! Welcome to the South Side, Randy Arozarena. Wow, that is big. I didn't think he was going to say yes, I'll be completely honest. I thought one of Houston or Philadelphia or some other contender was going to offer him the bag. We just got probably the best player in baseball last year. I think he was second in all of the MLB in WAR behind Riley Green. Sure, he's 36 years old. 10 years of MLB service is kind of the cutoff for when players start to go downhill. And by the end of year 2, when he's 37, his rating will probably be quite a bit lower. I don't care. This guy changed the culture in Philadelphia. He changed the culture in San Francisco. The Phillies won 2 World Series with him. Granted, he was injured when they beat us. And then the Giants this year, they were good enough to win the World Series. They were the best team in baseball. He was their best player. This is basically like we're getting Luis Robert, but probably even better offensively. So this offseason has been a disaster for the Giants. They do make sure they bring back Adley Rutschman, and they've got to re-sign Jackson Holliday. They already lost Adames. They already lost Arozarena, which isn't ideal. You can live with it if you re-sign Holliday, though. I'm going to bring our injured players back up to the big leagues just so I can take a look at this lineup. We can work with this. I mean, this is a really nice lineup. Sure, the infield spots are a little spotty, but Brian Ramos, Daniel Schneemann, Oswaldo Escobedo, those guys can play. Now all of our attention goes to the pitching. We need 3 starters, and we need an entire bullpen. We need 13 guys who can pitch for us. Right now, we have 5. We spent half of our remaining money on Randy Arozarena. We went into the offseason knowing that we could put about $255 million into player salaries. Of that $255, currently half of that, about $127 million is on the books. That accounts for Randy, that accounts for the big contracts we already had, and that accounts for the contracts that we renewed. So of the 50% of the money that we have left over, about $127 million, give or take, half of that is being estimated for our arbitrations, about $63 million. So if we cut that in half, we have about $63 million left that we can spend. In case the arbitration ends up being more than expected, I'd like to leave about $10 million of wiggle room. We could always make a trade with that as well, given the opportunity. So I would say we have about $55 million left over that we can spend on the pitching staff. I think we need about 6, 7, probably more like 8 guys, so we can offer each of these pitchers roughly an average of about $8 to $9 million a year, unless we go to the trade market or we go within the organization to go for somebody cheaper, because we could always do that as well. We wouldn't have to do all this if not for the 15% budget decrease. But of course, Jerry and friends do not want to make it easy for us, so we have no choice. We have 25% of the money left that we knew we were going to be able to use in the offseason, and now it's time to go all in on pitching. Now, unfortunately, I don't think there are a lot of good bargains available in terms of the starting pitching. I'm looking at roughly the $15 million range, and there's one price tag that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's Jagger Haynes, who's now here in free agency. I feel like we have to bring him back because he is by far the cheapest option available. I still want to get a couple more established starters. I like Spencer Schwellenbach quite a bit in Atlanta. He didn't play very well last year. Kind of a buy low option. He's been a super consistent middle of the rotation guy for them. He only played 10 games last year due to injury. I think he's exactly what we're looking for. I also want to start focusing on the bullpen. Jojo Romero is here. Brock Burke is here. Romero I can trust to stay healthy, so I'd rather start with him. So we can offer Haynes and Romero contracts right away, given that they've already been here. I'm going to lowball on these guys. I would like to sign them for as cheap as possible, especially considering that they are already interested in our team, given that they've already played here. I'll give JoJo the extra year. We don't really have a choice. He is on the older side, but in order to give him less money in the short term, we've got to probably give him a second year. That brings us to the winter meetings now. For those of you who missed the channel update that I uploaded like 2 weeks ago, I recorded that in Orlando because I got to go to the winter meetings this year. It was super cool. I did not get to see Scott Boras, unfortunately. I wanted to give him a piece of my mind. I did walk by Jeff Passan a few times. He is short. I can say that because I'm short as well. But he was a lot smaller than I expected. Anyway, let's simulate forward. Jagger Haynes. Are you window shopping or serious about buying? Well, I've made it pretty clear that I'm bargain hunting, so I'm not sure why you're surprised. On to the MLB Draft Lottery. We obviously do not have a lottery pick. We will be picking 27th in the first round. The lottery has regularly helped out our rivals in this series. San Diego, though, ends up being the team who jumps up this year. They have the 14th best odds. Or I think 13th, pardon. They go to number 1. So maybe they'll add a demon teammate for my guy Fernando Tatis. Well, that was quick. They did. Jason Dominguez is headed to San Diego. 8 years for $262. Took a little while for Dominguez to really get going, but this year with New York, he fully broke out into superstardom, had a WAR of nearly 7. Career high prior to that was less than 3, though. So is he a one-year wonder, or is he the real deal? Jojo Romero is back. We gave him the second year. He will be returning to the bullpen. Rule 5 draft. I actually think this could be a really good opportunity for us. This could be a way for us to get bargains in the bullpen. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. Dylan Coleman is a 79 overall. Now, he has not pitched in the big leagues in over 5 years. So this is a gamble, but he had a great year in the minors last year, and I really liked the skill set. He pitched mostly with the Royals. 2022, he was good. 2023, he was really bad. And he's pitched 1 game since then. But he's only making $420,000. He is cheap. If he can give us a third of the production that somebody we would pay $8 million to, that's well worth it. But we're not done. Justin Slayton in the second round. He is very experienced. 5 years of MLB service with the Red Sox. Mid-3.5s ERA. For roughly probably $500,000, I think that's what it'll cost at arbitration. This feels like a bargain. We could be paying a guy who's 10% better. We could pay him $7 million more. That's a big increase. So I think those two guys are going to be cheap for us. They will allow us to spend more money on the starters and relievers who we would like. And I think both players are pretty good. I think that ended up working out really well. And if we can't come to a good number for arbitration with Slayton, we can just return him to the Red Sox at no cost. So now we can offer Spencer Schwellenbach. We're going to start by lowballing. 3 years, about $45 million. Jagger Haynes, 67% interest. We're going to go up to 4 years. I'm going to offer him the lowest amount of money possible, but we'll go up to 4 years because he does have 4 years of arbitration team control left. So, I mean, there's not really a reason not to give him that. Tyler McGill goes to the Dodgers. That's a good move for them. They need pitching. We've got a decision for Schwellenbach. Do I look like an elephant for you because I don't work for peanuts? Okay, so I guess he wants a little bit more money, which is not ideal. I don't really want to give too much more. Jagger Haynes, though, is back. So after all that, Haynes will be returning. We probably would not have had to do this if not for Jerry Reinsdorf cutting the budget. But we're going to give Jagger Haynes one more shot. He's probably going to start next year in the rotation. I don't love it, but for a number 5 starter, I do think you can do worse. Another option for the starting pitching would be converting one of Ezra or Merced. Preferably Ezra, because I think Bruno Merced, he's just got a clutch gene that needs to stay in the bullpen. But we talked about it with Ezra in the past. This would be the time to do it if we want to convert him into a starter. We'll get back to that later, though. We'll still look through free agency. Other than Schwellenbach, I don't really think there's any good deals here. I decided to look at the trade market. Most of the guys I'm interested in, we can't trade for because they're not under contract, like Tink Hence. We wouldn't go after Tink Hence because he will be making a lot of money this year. But I'm more so thinking mid-80s range. These guys would make, I don't know, $12 million this year, which is better than paying like a 78 overall, the same number. So I decided to really dig deep in free agency, and I think Grant Holmes could be a gem who we could convert into a starter. He's only started 1 game in this series, but he's an innings eater who wasn't great last year in Atlanta, but has had some good seasons with the Braves. Plus, he's got some familiarity with Schwellenbach. We're going to up the offer for him a little bit. I'm going to stick with 3 years. I think we're looking at about $16 a year for Spencer. That's a really reasonable deal, and he says yes. So Spencer Schwellenbach has signed with the White Sox, And now this rotation is starting to really come along. We've got Noah Schultz, we've got Drew Thorpe, we've got Spencer Schwellenbach. That's the top three. Jagger Haynes could start if needed. Maybe we try something out with Ezra Valenzuela. I definitely want to sign, I think, one more free agent and maybe get a guy through the trade market. But all of a sudden, we're getting options in terms of the pitching. Grant Holmes for 1 year for about $5 million to potentially start games for us. That could end up being a major bargain. Could he be our next Hayden Wisniewski? So the rotation's coming along. The bullpen has some good depth, but it's not as good as it was last year. I don't expect it to be as good as it was last year, but I still want to add some impact relievers. I like Brock Burke. I don't trust him to stay healthy. I'd rather go cheaper. What about a guy like Johnny Brito, who's been with San Diego for a while? They got him in the Juan Soto deal with the Yankees. Remember, they also got Drew Thorpe in that deal and traded him to the White Sox just months later for Dylan Cease. Brito's been really good for them for quite some time. We still need another lefty, though. JoJo's the only lefty in the pen. Jose A. Ferrer was one of the best relievers in baseball last year with the Mets. We're buying high a little bit because he wasn't all that great beforehand, but he was excellent a year ago. If you're trying to motivate me to sign that offer, you've done the opposite. Great. Grant Holmes does not like being lowballed, it looks like. We can still offer him during this stage. The Guardians want Jordan Lawler. You can have him. It looks like both Brito and Ferrer are interested in deals. That's good. So I'm going to offer Holmes a low amount of money. I'm going to do the same with Johnny Brito, and I'm going to do the same with Jose A. Ferrer. As cheap as we can get in order to penny pinch as much money as possible. Johnny Brito signs with the White Sox. So even though we lowballed him, he says yes. Team player. I love to see it. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for Grant Holmes, who believes that we think he's an elephant. He does not like being lowballed. As for Jose Ferrer, he says, no dice, that offer's on ice. Up the ante with some heat, and I'll sign Toot Day Sweet. Bro thinks he's a poet. Jackson Holliday back to the Giants, 9 years, $335. San Francisco had to do this. They lost to Damas, they lost to Arozarena. You can live with that because both of those guys are in their mid-30s. You cannot live with losing 27-year-old Jackson Holliday, who they got via trade from the Orioles. They had to do this. They get their building block for the next 9 years. Grand slam for San Francisco. The Tigers are interested in Randy Rodriguez. I like him, but he wants a lot of money. I'd rather go cheaper with these two, even though they are both hilarious in terms of not wanting to be lowballed. So Holmes, I think we've got to offer a little bit more money. Ferrer, we're going to do the same. The two of them combined are going to make roughly $10 million. I also have my eye on Tony Santillan and Brock Burke here in free agency. Santillan especially because I really like his game. I think we might get back to him later, depending on what we get with these two, especially Ferrer, given that he's an actual reliever. Jose Ferrer is ready to take his talents to the south side. We add another lefty with Jojo Romero. That's a big deal. Now we've got two guys who we can put in certain lefty-on-lefty situations. Is this negotiation or a comedy show? Okay, Grant Holmes is pissed. We're going to keep offering him, though. I'm going to keep offering him a little more. That offer was 74% interest. He can't say no to that, right? Well, apparently he thinks that we believe he's an elephant. Okay, we're at 83%. That is a large number. Please. Finally, Jesus Christ. Grant Holmes is here. 5 years. 5 years? What? No. 1 year. $5.7 million. So we're at $172 million spent, still with about 64 in arbitration. So if you add those two numbers up, I think we're looking at $230 million, which is 20 lower than the $250 million threshold, which is good. So we're here in the month of February. It's time for arbitration hearings. This is kind of make or break for us. They side with us for Ramos. The panel signs with Schneemann. He'll be making $10 million. That's a lot for a utility guy. They side with Crawford, who will be making $22 million. He better step up in the playoffs. The panel sides with Abner Uribe, but for the most part, they ended up siding with us. So with the arbitrations now complete, we no longer have to estimate, and we can really have an actual picture painted of how much money we're spending. So in terms of player salaries, $241 million. And of the total budget, we have $77 million available. Last year, we had $4 million available. So that means that we've been able to stay under the necessary threshold by like $20 million, which is really good. I think our lineup is in a good spot. I think our rotation's in a good spot, but there's one problem. We have to be number one in one of these team stats. We're second in power, third in contact, fourth in pitching, fifth in speed, second overall. That's not good enough. We have to be first in one of them. So that means we've got to go back to free agency. Since we're second in power, I think we need to look at power. And lucky for us, Mike Trout is still there. We're going to offer him 1 year, $9 million. He says no. What about 10? He says yes. So with the addition of Mike Trout, we are now number one in terms of power. So with that, I don't think there's much more we need to do this offseason for our roster. I've still got my eye on Tony Santillan. I'm not going to offer him right now. It might be something we do during the spring, or maybe we even wait a little bit in April like we did this year. But we've been able to stay under the budget. We needed to keep about 55 available. We're at 66. Player salaries, we could go up to roughly 255. We're at 251. So we're able to be aggressive, fill out the roster, add some star power, and still decrease the team budget by about 15%. Now, the one thing I wanted to do is potentially trade for a pitcher, and the guy I had my eye on was Chase Burns in Cincinnati. I thought it'd be kind of hard. They actually seemed kind of willing to play ball. So I ended up coming up with a deal to where they would get Jagger Haynes and a prospect, and we'd be able to land Chase Burns, who I think is better than Jagger Haynes. The idea for the Reds, though, is that Jagger Haynes is going to be cheap over the next 4 years because we gave him, in my opinion, a really team-friendly contract. We are getting, in my opinion, the better player with Burns. They could have gotten Chase Mydroff, but they are loaded in the infield. They don't need Chase Mydroff. They have Cyrus, who looks like a demon. So I think they'd rather a prospect like Rufus G, who I do like. But we have to spin the wheel. Does ownership approve of this? They say, oh wow, it's right on the edge. No. They don't want to spend the extra $2 million on Chase Burns. We're rubbing up on the $255 million that we can put into the players. Reinsdorf's not going any higher. So it looks like we're going to stick with Jagger Haynes. I'm a little concerned. His ERA was in the 5s last year. The advanced metrics suggest he's better than that, though. So I will choose to be optimistic. Let's take a look at some signings across Major League Baseball. We already know a lot of the big ones, but some of the other highlights include Ronnie Mauricio to the Nationals. I don't know why the Mets let him and Beatty go. Parker Meadows stays in the division. He's headed to Cleveland. Shane Bieber back to Milwaukee. Kobe Mayo to Colorado. Devin Williams is in our division. He signs with Detroit. Brandon Williamson leaves our division, going from Kansas City to the Cubs. That's good news. Hayden Wesneski, 3 years, $31 million a year in Boston. So pretty much doubled what Spencer Schwellenbach got. I'm super happy for Hayden Wesneski. He deserves all the money in the world. We turned him from a journeyman reliever into an all-star starter who's making $90 million. However, I do think it worked out because I think Schwellenbach is not half the player that Wesneski is, and we're giving him half the money. Justin Steele to Detroit. Big get for the Tigers. Austin Wells stays in Cleveland. Jonathan India to the Mets. Dylan Cruz, 6 years, $120 in Baltimore. I would not have given him that. I think that will be a mistake. He really only played 1 year with us, then he tore his Achilles. Then we traded him to Milwaukee, where he was pretty mediocre. I think 120 is a little rich, but he will reunite with Luis Robert. He will not reunite with Ketel Marte, though, because he's going to the Dodgers. 3 years, about $15 a year. That's really reasonable for Ketel Marte. Yeah, he might be bad by the end of that contract, but it's the Dodgers. They don't care. Jackson Jobe to the Red Sox. Tanner Bybee to the Red Sox. They're really redoing their rotation. Dean Kramer back with the A's. He was good for us for a couple months. Jose Butto with the Tigers. Pete Crow Armstrong with the Nationals. Corey Julks back to the Astros, where he started his career before coming to the White Sox. He'll be signing for 2 years, about $20 million a year. Colson Montgomery, 1 year, $8 million in Toronto. Hopefully he can turn it around there. Jose Ramirez, the reigning World Series MVP, leaves Detroit. He's going to the Mets. He's still got quite a bit left in the tank. I do think the Tigers upgraded, though, with Alex Bregman. Carlos Correa to Cleveland. The Tigers lose Christian Javier to the Pirates. Brock Burke gets big money from Cincinnati. Really good player, but can he stay on the field? They certainly think so. Dane Myers gets big money from the Angels. 3 years, $45. He had a nice year for us. I'm happy that he gets to chase his bag. Kopech to the Red Sox. The Twins add Lucas Giolito and Bowden Francis. Yuri Perez, 1-year prove-it deal with the Phillies. Josh Hader returns to Milwaukee where he's been. And Justin Martinez is going to the Rangers. Big-time closer for a Texas team who, I mean, we saw it in Game 5 of the ALDS. They really could have used a good closer against us. So I think we're good on deals. I think we're ready for spring training. And I like where this team is at. Apparently some of our team rankings went down. I don't know how that happened. But at the end of the offseason, we were number 1 in power. So that's good enough, in my opinion, for the wheel requirement. I don't know why it's down to 3rd. I think because of the 40-man roster, because all the prospects are now here. I like where this lineup is with the addition of Arozarena. I think our pitching is in better shape than last year. Sure, we lose Valdez. We lose Wisniewski. The rotation, I think, is deeper. We bring back Drew Thorpe. We add Schwellenbach. We've got some questions otherwise. Pretty much 2 players, or 2 spots. We've got 3 players going after with Jagger Haynes, Grant Holmes, and Ezra Valenzuela. I don't even know if we want to make Ezra a starter, but we will explore it in the spring. And then I think the bullpen might be a little worse than last year. We don't have Brian King. We don't have Edwin Uceta. And we don't have Tony Santillan for now, but it's not that much worse. We'll go through our opening day. We're headed to the champs. We're going to Comerica to play Tarek Skubal and the Tigers. And I think the plan is we're going to get through the regular season pretty quick. I want to get through seasons fast. My idea is that we go through season 7, or at least the regular season, in 3 episodes. 2 episodes, 1 game per month. Or no, it would be 1 game per month. 2 months per episode. There we go. Got it right. Okay. That'll wrap things up. I hope you guys enjoyed the offseason. Let me know what you thought of our moves down below in the comments. Make sure to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.